The wonder of extreme adventure is you never know how things will turn out. By its very nature, it involves pushing the limits of human endeavour and demands a bit of good luck. Australia's Adrian McRae thought he'd dreamt up the ultimate adventure, to paraglide off the roof of Africa. Hundreds of daredevils joined his incredible quest up Mount Kilimanjaro, but as Alison Langdon discovered, none of them could know what the mountain had in store.
Snaking up a rocky flank of one of the world's great peaks, the most ambitious mountain migration ever undertaken. 700 people heading for the roof of Africa, to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro.
It's Kilimanjaro, one of the 7 summits. It's the most iconic landmark on the continent of Africa.
Rising 5,895 metres, this dormant volcano is the highest freestanding mountain in the world.
Oh, thank you.
And it's become something of an obsession for event organiser Adrian McRae, a construction boss from the Pilbara in Western Australia.
How does an Aussie boy from the bush end up here, doing something like this?
Oh, look, I've always had a strong belief in people's ability to do whatever they wanted, and this is one of those times that, you know, I believed in something strong enough to make it work.
What this 37-year-old is attempting is a world first, getting 100 paragliders to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, then jumping off. And as I experienced before we set out,
Africa's just beautiful. I don't ever want to go back down. No.
It seemed like an inspired way to raise $1 million for Tanzanian charities.
It's not about setting records, it's about raising money for charity and giving 100 of the coolest adventurers in the world one of the biggest and coolest adventures they're ever going to have.
What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. Sure, nothing, hopefully.
But a lot could and would go wrong.
People are cold, people have not had enough water.
I'm just finding today really hard.
I need you to give those coordinates to the helicopter.
This epic operation, 600 porters for 100 paragliders' equipment and supplies, kicked off on January 29.
Someone's got the guide and talk to their guide. Yeah, the guide's familiar with who they are. Okay, head off. Okay.
For Adrian, it's been a long, hard road just getting to this point.
You can't do anything but laugh at this chaos that's around us, but it's game time. Mm-hmm. Excited.
This is happening.
Yeah, it really is. Look
This is
around.
happening.
It really is.
Up on the mountain, there's nothing to sustain us. The lush rainforests at the foot of Kilimanjaro will soon turn to barren rock and ice. Everything we need for this trip must be carted up.
We've got a couple of 100 tents, we've got food supplies for 3 days at a time. We're bringing up over 20 tonnes of water, 20,000 litres of water. Yeah, look, it's hard to get your head around, I think, until you see it.
We're under no illusion. This will be a hard 7-day slog.
How many times have you cursed your brother so far?
During the climb?
Yeah.
Or during the last 26 years?
For first-time mountaineers like myself and Paula McRae, Adrian's younger sister and co-organiser, It's a journey that will test us.
I tell everyone if we were husband and wife, we were divorced about 10 times by now. But it's been fun, hasn't it?
How much
You're out of breath, sunshine.
further are we going to climb today?
It's only about
10
an hour,
minutes.
hour and a half left.
Hour and a half left?
Yes.
Come on, you're good. You're good.
I'm feeling fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to follow behind you with this?
Is that a cattle prod?
It could be.
We need electricity to move her ass.
This is pork meat with chili.
At first, the mood is electric.
In Mexico, we call taco.
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 So in Africa, taco
Means
is us.
People from 27 countries. In what feels more like a New Year's Eve party than a high-altitude expedition.
Hakuna Matata Kilimanjaro.
And while the summit might still loom high above us, some just can't wait to spread their wings. Sunset at altitude 4,800 metres. The air turns freezing. The party atmosphere evaporates after a gastrobug hits the camp. The higher we climb, the more apparent the challenges of keeping an expedition of this scale on track.
When do most people start to struggle?
As far as the altitude goes, I mean, normally people might start struggling after about 3,000.
We are now into very thin air.
Yeah, I'm down up.
And Australian Matt Knox is one of 3 doctors charged with keeping us healthy. The biggest worry, altitude sickness.
There's 2 sort of main problems that can kill people. Cerebral edema, so fluid in the brain, and pulmonary edema, and fluid in the lungs. And many people are known to die from that.
Dex will work. Give her Dex. Friend.
At these oxygen-deprived heights, I crash. I find myself unable to breathe.
I'm just finding today really hard.
It's not just the body that struggles at this altitude. So does your mind. What's normally a minor asthma condition suddenly becomes a big concern.
I think it was more a panic attack.
It's fine. No worries. It's an unusual environment for people, especially if you're worried about asthma and things like that. You get worried that it's going to be a problem. And
Hills.
hills. Oh, okay, well, lucky we don't have one of them.
Hills seem to set it off.
So we'll just cruise along really easily. Now,
I can see why a quarter of those who tackle Mount Kilimanjaro don't make the summit. Each step gets harder and slower. The view, though, just keeps getting better.
We're above the clouds.
Thousands of feet above. Yeah, it's pretty cool vista, isn't it? The mountain behind. It's hard to believe we've just come from down there.
It's a long way down, isn't it?
Not so far down, but it's a long way up.
Well above 5,000 metres now, and the oxygen's half that at sea level. The landscape is Arctic. Kilimanjaro's magnificent icy crown.
It's absolutely stunning. It's just worth that extra climb to come and see that up close. We're on the equator here, we've got snow, we've got glaciers, we've got ice, some huge cliffs, and absolutely some of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet.
In the end, this is such a personal journey. You've battled the thin air, the brutal weather, and just the sheer exhaustion, but you get to this point and you see this. But the best part of all is that that's the summit right there.
Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
You gotta see it. This is awesome. I can't believe we're up here. I can't believe we're up here.
Top of Africa.
You proud of each other?
I'm proud of her, absolutely.
Oh.
She's done so much for this event to make it real, and standing on the top of Africa with her is pretty cool.
For Adrian and Paula, getting a record number of people to the summit is an extraordinary achievement. Now, our paragliding fate is in the lap of the weather gods. Clouds and cyclonic winds move in. We're hit by a once-in-a-decade storm. The summit camp is snap frozen, and suddenly we're stuck here with little food and no water. Worse still, half the porters quit.
10, 20, we need 20 boxes. So 1 hour and a half, I need the answer of where the water is, when it's going to get here.
We're now facing a deadly combination: high altitude and dehydration.
How are you feeling?
Shit house.
How?
I'll just be nauseous and headaches and...
I need you to give those coordinates to the helicopter.
Desperate, Adrian calls base camp to see if water can be choppered in.
Yeah, just need water immediately, then we'll get him to do another drop for food.
A break in the weather delivers manna from heaven. But by now, too many are just too weak.
Okay, so I've spoken to Adrian. Everyone is going to descend.
Off ASAP.
Off ASAP.
Right, cool.
And doctors deliver the news we'd all been fearing. The mission is over.
People are cold, people have not had enough water, people have not had enough sleep. Half of the camp is not now fit to fly. Okay? So we're going to pack up this camp. Everyone is going to descend.
You must be gutted.
Yeah, look, it's bloody disappointing, but 13 years of weather data that said that this wouldn't happen, and here it is, it's happened.
Has the mountain beaten you?
And the mountain's beaten us, but certainly the weather. Weather's weather, you just got to hope for the best, and sometimes you strike it, sometimes you don't.
Having come so far, Kilimanjaro had its own plans. But Adrian, ever the adventurer, won't be bowed by the mountain forever, and won't surrender his quest to fly from the roof of Africa.
I barely know anyone in the world that wouldn't want to climb Kilimanjaro and fly from the top. It's just certainly a dream of mine, and it can be done.
Would you call yourself a bit of a dreamer?
No doubt. Absolutely. Yeah, look, sure, I'm a dreamer, but it's, as John Lennon said, I'm not the only one.